In our last lesson, we learned how we could use circles to draw on the screen. We also did a little bit with rectangles, but we're going to go ahead and try to use triangles today and show how those work. So I'm going to open my Coding with Chrome application and go into Code. And if I go to Basic Coding, I'm going to go ahead and start off at the top. And we're going to create a function to build a triangle first off. So I'm going to go ahead and declare a function, create triangle, and we'll say x1, y1, x2, y2, x3, y3. We'll give it a fill color, a stroke color, and a stroke. And you can see this is a long function, so it's going all the way up the screen. If I go ahead and move this over, you can see, now I can see the entire function. I'm going to go ahead and create a triangle as a new object. And we're going to fill in all the bits of that. x1 is equal to x1, triangle.x2 is equal to x2, triangle.x3 is equal to x3, triangle.y1 is equal to y1, triangle.y2 is equal to y2, triangle.y3 is equal to y3. And it doesn't actually matter what order I put these in. It's all doesn't matter if I spell these things right, but these right now I'm just filling in properties for the object, so it doesn't really matter what order it happens as long as I get all of them. Stroke color is equal to stroke color, and triangle dot stroke is equal to stroke. So once I've done all of that, I can return my triangle, but I'm also going to define a function for, or a method for actually drawing the triangle. Triangle.draw is equal to function. And we're going to use draw.triangle, this.x1, this.y1, this.x2, this.y2. And here it does actually matter what order we call things in. This.fill color, this.stroke color, this.stroke. So now I should be able to draw my triangle. We'll go ahead and start with the triangle about right here. So var triangle is equal to create triangle. We'll say about 100, 100 for our first point. You know, that'll be about right here. We'll say for our second point, we'll say, we'll also make it at about, you know, say 300, so we'll move it further out to the right, and we'll make it a little bit further down, and then we'll draw the last point. We'll say 140 will be our x coordinate, and somewhere around 350 will be our y coordinate. And then if we draw our triangle, then we have a triangle out there in space. We can actually give it some colors too, so we'll say let's make a blue triangle with a black border and a 6 pixel stroke. There we go. So we have our nice triangle. And this triangle is out there, and we could actually change around where the points are. So if we want to move that bottom point a little, you know, this last point a little bit further to right, we could say 180. And you can see now the point is going to move a little bit. If we want to move it a lot further, we could say 280. It's going to shift our triangle's point. So if we wanted to actually animate this triangle so that it would move, you know, let's say that last point could move to the left and right. We'll go ahead and even this out. We'll say we're going to make our triangle up here 300, 100. And we'll say this last point, we're going to make our triangle a right triangle with the point moving down to the left here. So we'll say 100, 300 as well. So now we have a right triangle. We have points in all of the directions. Now if we want to actually have this triangle move back and forth, we're going to do a couple of things. First thing we're going to do is we're going to say triangle dot point right is equal to true. So the reason we're going to do that is we're going to move this back and forth based on where it is. So we're going to say, define a new function here, move triangle. And we're going to use this one just like we did the last one. We'll use a set timeout to create some animation. So move triangle. We're going to actually have the triangle's points move around a little bit from position to position. We're going to say if triangle dot point right. We're going to create some variables around that, or we're going to move the properties around on that point a little bit. So if triangle should be pointing right, we're going to say triangle dot x3 plus equals, say, 2. We'll move it around a little bit here. Else, triangle dot point left, or I'm sorry, triangle dot x3 minus equals 2. So if it's moving to the right, we're going to have this coordinate move to the right, and if it's not, we're going to have it move to the left. And now we're going to say, all right, if our point has reached the point where it's even with the this rightmost point, which is point 300, 100, so we're going to say if triangle dot x3 is greater than or equal to 300, triangle, well, we need to handle this, and if we handle this side, let's go ahead and show what happens here. Triangle dot point right is equal to false, so we're going to move this back to the right now. But we also need to handle another case because it's going to move back to the left, but we want it to move or to reverse direction again. So we can say else if triangle dot x3 is less than or equal to 100, which is our leftmost point, we're going to say triangle dot point right is equal to true. Then we're going to call set timeout, move triangle, and we'll do this, say, every 20 milliseconds. So now what should happen if we finally call move triangle, we're actually not getting any changes, and that's because we actually haven't had it redraw. So let's go ahead and have our triangle redraw. Triangle dot draw. And you can see here we're getting some nice animation of that triangle, but it's not redrawing itself. It's not clearing the screen out, so we're actually seeing the point move around, but it's actually leaving that border everywhere. So we're going to also have to clear the screen if we want this to look like a true moving triangle. So we can define the same function we defined the last time, function clear screen, and we can use draw dot rectangle, which isn't actually the most efficient way of clearing the screen, but it'll work. 2000 white. And then before we draw our triangle, we'll just call that clear screen function. Now you can see we get this nice triangle that's moving along. Now, using all these triangles, we could actually build lots of different shapes if we use triangles to kind of encompass multiple things, because pretty much everything is just a bunch of triangles put together. So stringing lots of triangles together, you could actually create some pretty complex animations. We could actually have lots of other parts of this triangle moving as well. We could have the top right corner moving along with the bottom corner. If we want to actually go one step further and see what that looks like, during point right, we could actually be saying triangle dot y2 plus equals 2, and down here triangle dot y2 minus equals 2. So now we can see it's actually going to collapse all the way down to a line and then fan back out. It's kind of an interesting little movement here, just based on the basic geometry of moving this thing around. In fact, if we want to just change this to 1, we get a totally different view. No, it's not going to fan all the way down. It's just going to change the size of our triangle. If we wanted to have this thing moving, say, downward as it kind of pulsates here like this, we could actually have every call here say triangle dot x3, or I'm sorry, triangle dot x1 plus plus, triangle dot y2 plus plus, and triangle dot y3 plus plus. So now our triangle is going to pulsate. It's also going to move downward slowly. See how it's kind of like moving on this axis. If I go ahead and refresh, see how it kind of moves down and then stops there, because as we're moving this coordinate y2 up, it's actually having a few cycles where it moves this one down. So just to walk through what actually is happening here, we're actually doing a lot of code before we actually draw, or before we do any real changes here. We're defining this function, we're not calling it yet. We're defining this function, we're not calling it yet. Now we're building a triangle and just drawing it, but we're not actually doing much with it. It's not until we call move triangle where this move triangle code gets called, where we increase y1, increase y2, increase y3, and then either increase y3 and y2 again, or decrease increase x3 and then increase y2 again, or we decrease x3 and decrease y2. And here we just switch things back and forth. So using some very basic logic and some very basic coordinates, we can actually draw this triangle that almost looks like it has a life of its own. Thanks for watching today.